Ho 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 ho! Welcome back to Let's Dev. Today we are completing work on this year's Let's Dev holiday special. Now last time we added quote-unquote animations to our player character, which was quite a learning experience. We also worked on features that relied on visual feedback, including fishing. And we also started adding nifty little HUD elements to our game. Overall, it was a very productive step forward, but at the cost of a lot of our allotted time. And we continue to round out our game with the additions of survival elements, including health and temperature, and ways to recover them. We'll also add in actual danger to the player in the form of a woodland monster. And we'll finish things off by adding the win condition for our game. All this with some added sprinkling of visual effects to make things look a bit nicer. That's a whole lot to get through, so let's not waste any more time and get to the coding. First, I started by basically giving the game a graphical overhaul. I wasn't satisfied with the color palette or the fact that everything looked like flat blobs of color on the screen. So I went back and recolored everything. Every single model. The process took hours, which again would have taken even longer had Magical Voxel not supported sprite stacking natively. However, with some time saved, the process still took a huge chunk of it. But to be fair, visually it was so much better than before. So with our models fixed, I wanted to make our water prettier, and because it behaves so differently from the other natural resources, it seemed like the best idea was to make water its own object. This change would also allow me to use a method of auto-tiling I discovered recently. Using Bitwise, which involves some black magic via mathing through binary, it's possible to use 4 position checks to determine the appropriate image needed. It's actually a very interesting technique that extends beyond just GameMaker, and I highly recommend seeking it out for yourselves. Unfortunately, my crack at it was a bit of a dud. Either the tile template I found online was inaccurate, or I messed up the position checks. Either way, a few alterations later, and we had a proper Bitwise based auto tile going for our water. It just loaded in nicely and properly and didn't require ridiculous amounts of position checks like I've tried in previous projects. But now we had yet another issue. Due to this new method, our fish, layered on top of the water, would cause visual issues. So I thought to use a surface. I draw the water, draw the masking areas, and draw the fish's sprites to the surface, and have the masking crop the fish sprites. It'd basically be the reverse of the lighting effect from our first holiday special game. That turns out it's apparently a lot harder to do than I anticipated. I spent over 3 hours trying to get this to work. Long story short, in the end I redid the water sprites to separate the water and the edges. Then because the fish would clip regardless of layering, I changed their color to match the snow. This way they would pop visually in the water, and if they clip into the snow, it's almost impossible to tell. And even worse yet, I accidentally deleted majority of the footage of this process while clearing my hard drive so I could keep recording more footage for this very special. To say I was having a bad time here would be an understatement. Anyway, with the whole ordeal done with, we could finally move on. I created our spooky woodland creature, which I just called Bear. Yeah. Anyway, our bear would then get the same treatment as our player in terms of the animation. I then had it chase the player and give it a continuous check to randomly decide if it would, in fact, chase the player. Once I was liking the way it behaved, I added the good old reliable pathfinding code we've used many times before, and the results were exactly what we needed. Although the poor thing did get stuck sometimes, despite having proper collision masks. So, with pathfinding working for the most part, I added the attack state to the bear. Standard attack code here. When near the player, it creates a hurt box object intended to, well, hurt the player. But since our health system doesn't exist yet, it just mildly annoys the player, which ended up working properly, and given the journey up until this point, it was a very satisfying thing to witness. Anyway, moving on, we now had to take into account dummies the player could craft. These dummies would act as distractions, allowing players to temporarily avoid bear attacks. And as they're attacked, their health withers away to eventual destruction. And in case you're curious, yes, it uses the same exact damage check we've used in just about every project we've ever done. Anyway, the end result was exactly what we were after. An aggressive enemy unit meant to attack the player, but could be deterred temporarily with easy to build dummy distractions. And then made our bear mortal with the addition of health and once again that lovely damage check code. So with one danger down, there were 2 left to tackle. player health, and temperature. I added variables for player health, player heat, and heat modifiers. Then in the step event, I had the player's heat degrade over time, and when in close distance to a campfire, heat would slowly be added back to the player's heat meter. These additions and subtractions would be based on the heat modifiers. Next, I set up the player's health, just like we did with the bear and dummies, damage checks and all. Now, if players want to heal, they simply need to eat some fish. Fish that can be prepared in a number of ways, each with their varying degrees of healing effectiveness, which includes whether they're cooked or not. It took some tweaking to get the numbers in a fair place, but eventually we'd have both a health and temperature system in place that the player would need to keep their eye on. I should also mention that yes, the campfire is supposed to have a flame effect, it just hasn't been added yet. Anyway, with our survival systems now in place, that also meant potential lose conditions were also in place. So it was time to focus on the actual win condition of our game. Enter our slay object. In order to win, all the player has to do is collect and toss the required amounts of resources / craftables into the sleigh, and boom, congratulations, you have won the game. First, I created an array specifically checking for the necessary resources. I then created a second array that would simply contain the max amount of the resources we would need, because at this point, I'm apparently trying to make things as difficult and complicated as possible for myself. Anyway, I then checked the current amount of deposited resources to the amount needed. Once our requirements are met, we'd initiate the win state, whatever that eventually be. I then drew that list of requirements to the HUD in a menu that could be toggled on and off, and there we had it, our win condition was in place. So, with our win and loss conditions added to the game, up next was... well, actually, that was it. Sadly, our 24-hour limit was reached, which meant that was it. Full transparency, according to my records, by this point I'd maybe had an hour or two left. However, given how much was still left to do, there was no way I'd get it done in time. We're talking big things here too, like optimization, the entire audio portion of the game, and just general balancing of the experience. And if it wasn't obvious by now, the main reason I failed to deliver this year was definitely down to the visuals. Having to create a model for each frame of animation across multiple states and objects, on top of everything else, and then going back and redoing it all again, it was definitely the biggest mistake. And spending so much time trying to get that surface issue resolved was another mistake. But I honestly chalked that one up to GameMaker just being weird to work with sometimes. Truthfully, I'm still actually kinda salty about that one. So, it is with a heavy heart that I say sorry I wasn't able to deliver a proper holiday special in full this year. I tried my best, but sometimes it's just not enough. And honestly, this goes to show that sometimes tackling a project with friends isn't a bad idea. Making games doesn't always have to be a lone wolf kind of experience, you know? Anyway, with or without something to release this year, I want to thank each and every one of you who have continued to support this series. I also want to thank all of you for not only being here, but also sharing your own thoughts and stories about your own game creations. This year of Let's Dev has been a tremendous learning experience for myself personally, and I'm glad that you all decided to come along on the ride with me. Hopefully what I learned from this year's failure will lead to brighter successes next year, and if it doesn't, as long as we're having fun, that's all that should matter. But with that said, not only have we come to the end of today's episode of the Let's Dev Holiday Special, but also this year's Holiday Special altogether. Hope you all have a wonderful holiday and a safe, happy new year, and here's to another year of having fun making some video games. So as always, remember that if you like this video or enjoy Let's Dev in general, be sure to hit that like button. If you aren't already subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. And as always, be sure to leave your thoughts on this year's project in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.